I was hoping for more different. I was hoping for something new. I was hoping for a different vibe when it came to the Panthers. Chris Tabor took over. They moved on from Frank Reich, obviously. Josh McCown, Deuce Staley. I was hoping for something different. Felt pretty similar.
Well, they did have a lead at one point.
Hey, that's true.
Lasted for 16 seconds, but they had it.
Thank you to the Bucs. And thank you to Mike Evans for ending it quickly. Thank you facetiously, but you know what I'm saying. Chris Tabor, the interim head coach, spoke to the media today about his role on both the offense and defense, and maybe not role on offense and defense.
I think we were dialed in with regards to when we were going to go forward on fourth down and those type of things that you learn. Obviously, it's a little bit of a new setup, and I'm obviously taking a little bit more of a role. Let our coaches coach, and that's what I did. And moving forward, we'll kind of stay with that operation, but I'll definitely be involved.
Let the coaches coach. I actually like that from an interim, right? You look at the coordinators and say, hey, you're in deep. Figure it out. If you need me, I'm here.
Well, I thought that final offensive possession in the fourth quarter, he said, hey, you got 4 downs here.
Yep. I mean, that's
Thomas Brown, you got 4 downs.
Communicating that early, all of those things are important, and then getting out of the way, I'm fine with it. And I do think there were some big picture things they wanted to try. It was obvious they wanted to get the ball to Jonathan Mingo more. They said, hey, we drafted this guy in the second round. The coaching staff, whatever, you were involved, you were not involved, weren't using him very much, and he had his best game. It wasn't a great game. It wasn't an unbelievable game, but it was his best game. They got DJ Chark involved a little bit later in the game. They got some other wide receivers involved. Okay. But at the expense of that, Adam Thielen's production was below his averages, right? At the expense of that, some other guys suffered, so it's not like there was a net positive. So I'm looking and going, what was really different? The more and more things change, the more and more they stay the same. The more and more we learn the roster is just not good enough. They don't have the Jimmies and Joes, right? It's the Jimmies and Joes or it's the X's and O's. And I'm looking at it going, they're changing the X's and O's. They're trying new things. They were calling a different set of plays, granted out of the same playbook, but a different set of plays. They had a different kind of goal, different players out there at times. Amir Smith-Marset had a higher snap percentage.
A lot of them.
I mentioned Jonathan Mingo being featured as kind of the main target getter in the pass game. There were differences. Chuba Hubbard still took over and didn't relinquish many of those carries or volume to Miles Sanders.
They treated him like the number 1 back.
That's a lot of different to put out the same problem, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of different to put out the same product. It's like, you can only move the deck chair so much before the ship goes down. And Dennis and I were talking off air. Where's the Panthers' Mike Evans? And maybe that's unfair because, the more and more Mike Evans just is the most consistent receiver in the NFL. And the more and more he cranks out 1,000-yard seasons. Fun fact about Mike Evans. There are 2 wide receivers in NFL history to have 10 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Mike Evans, as of this past weekend, and Jerry Rice. That's the entire list. That's a good list to be on. The Panthers don't have any of those guys. What are they supposed to do when Mike Evans makes the big play? You mentioned that the Panthers had a lead. They had a lead for, I believe it was exactly 1 special teams play and 1 offensive play.
Yep, that's it.
Because then Mike Evans made a catch, dove for the pylon, touchdown, big fireworks. That's the type of player that the Panthers have been craving and just don't have. You may have thought it was DJ Moore. You may have thought it was supposed to be Miles Sanders. You may have thought it was supposed to be Jonathan Mingo. They don't have that dude. On either side of the ball, I'll add. Maybe you thought it was going to be Brian Burns. Maybe you thought it was going to be J.C. Horn, who still didn't look himself out there for the parts he was out there during that game. It's the best way I can describe it, the best analogy I can make, it's a basketball analogy. It is when the other team scores 8 straight points, 2 threes, and a fast break bucket. The coach looks to the best player, the bucket getter, and says, I need you to get me a bucket just to stop the bleeding. right? I don't care if you have to get to the line. I don't care if you have to bully ball. I don't care what you have to do. You need a pick and roll. You need an ISO. You tell me. I need a bucket to stop the bleeding. The Panthers simply don't have it. And you can get by if like for a couple weeks on smoke and mirrors, where when you need a bucket, you call like the double reverse. When you need a bucket, you call the perfectly set up play. But at a certain point, you just need dudes. You just need someone to say, I'm better than the guy guarding me. I'm better than the guy who's trying to tackle me. I'm better than the guy who's trying to stop me. And again, it can be a defensive player, right? Go get me a turnover. Right? Go make a big sack. Go do something to stop the bleeding. It can be a defensive player. We haven't seen it. Now, I would say there's better candidates to be that guy on defense than offense, but we haven't seen it.
The Carolina Panthers have one strip sack this season. That came on
Yikes.
the very first drive against Atlanta. Brian Burns had a strip sack of Desmond Ridder, and Ridder recovered that fumble. That's the only
good old
one.
Days. Remember how good that felt?
It did feel great. Everyone's like, pay this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
He had 2 sacks in that game. Everyone's like, let's go.
Pay him right then and there. Sign it on the field. It's. I feel for the coaching staff. I feel for Bryce Young. It's a roster assembly issue. And that largely falls on the front office. And ironically, they are the only group that has not suffered. Players have been benched. Coaches have been fired. Front office, largely intact. And when it's a roster assembly issue, they're usually the ones that should be and or need to be paying the price.